Thank you very much, Marco Ranocchiari, for joining us today. We're going to be talking a little bit about data journalism and how to use data to tell climate stories. Now, data journalism is something that is a buzzword almost already. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody's talking about it, and everybody knows a few of the tools that you can use to visualize the data and make your stories deeper and more insightful with these tools. However, um, often that's not the case. Data journalism, because it has become a buzzword, sometimes it has become the goal instead of the means. Uh, and the goal should always be telling a story. Um, so instead of just telling data and using cool tools to put some very interesting graphs there, we're going to be looking today at how data can be actually used to tell stories. And particularly, we're going to focus on climate stories. To do that, we have invited one of our fellows, Marco Ranocchiari, who's a freelance journalist based in Trento, in northern um, Italy, and he has been doing some very interesting stuff with both with us and as a freelancer with data and with graphic representation of data and very and so we have invited him today to tell a little bit about his experience and how you can use data to tell a story and not the other way around. So I'm not going to take any more time for you, Marco. Please feel free to start. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Santiago, and hi to everybody who is listening, and thank you for inviting me. I was really feeling flattered to read that you liked my job as a freelancer in data-driven articles and works in general. So I will just introduce myself very shortly. I am a freelancer, but I have a background in earth science, and I've been working as an educator for a few years now, parallel with my job as a freelancer in journalism. And so I'm trying to use my background in science and in disseminating science as my, let's say, extra weapon to deliver my messages in journalism, trying to conjugate these two aspects. So I almost I started since my beginning of my first works as a journalist, were dealing a lot with data, but still I don't consider myself as a data journalist because it's really a huge field of things that can be done, and I'm still learning, I have to say. But I really like this, and I think it has a lot of potential to do it, to do a lot of very different kinds of stories and messages. And I prepared a short presentation. I will try to share it. Maybe it's easier to follow me with that. So I will try to share my presentation. Just wait a moment. Okay, these ones are just two slides showing some of my articles that are dealing with data. And I would just, it's not to me that I should define what it is, but I think it helps to understand what we are talking about. So in my opinion and in my experience, when we talk about data journalism, we sometimes we mean different things. And I thought of searching about how data journalism is called otherwise, like a few years ago, or sometimes it is called like computer assisted journalism, or precision journalism, or journalism with a scientific method-based journalism, or something like that. It's not really a definition, but I think all these kinds of descriptions, they tell different aspects on what it is. So of course it's useful to to use computer tools that we find in the internet, or maybe we have some programs to do that. And thanks to that, in the last years, data journalism has really exploded, let's say. But of course, in theory, it is possible to use data and statistic also. It was possible to do it even in the past on printed papers and so on. What now is really different is that you can produce paragraph graphs and diagrams and maps that are interactive. So it's much more user friendly to do it, and it's, of course, it really helped a lot, and it provides a lot of possibilities, and you don't have to be a scientist or a programmer to do that. So I think that's the reason why it's been really growing so much in the last years. And I will just go back to this slide, because in my experience, there are two possible extremes to say what is data journalism. So you can either start from a news and from a topic, from a question that you have in your mind, and you go search your data to help you understand better what you're talking about, or maybe to confirm what you want to say. But you can also just study data sets that are already existing. Maybe they are published somewhere in some websites or in some reports and so on, and you go and explore them, trying to read them and find out what they mean. So you find the news inside the data. So it's like two opposite ways, like data can come first or they can come after. And in my experience, it's not really like this. It's not two extremes. It's more like a circle. Like you start with one idea, and then you find some data, and data tell you that you should change some of what you thought it was right, and then you change your story according to what you find. So it's not really like that. Maybe like ideally, the real data-driven journalism should be when you find the news inside the data. But this is harder to do, and it's not always necessary, in my opinion. The data can often just help you understand better a phenomenon or a news. Just one thing that I noticed, it's really incredible how numbers and data can really say completely different stories if you do the cherry picking or this kind of things. Like there is a famous quotation that I wrote down by an economist, and it says that if you torture the data long enough, it will confess to anything. So like you have to be honest, because you can always find some study, some paper, something that can tell you what you want to say, but even if it's not exactly what is at stake. So it's not that numbers allow you to say everything. You always need to explain and to understand it better. So it's a risk that is often there. Like try to demonstrate something using only the numbers that you would like to say, because most people think that numbers don't lie, but they can lie sometimes. So that's one of the most delicate parts of it. This is, of course, I didn't do that. It's a scheme made by Paul Broadshaw that is teaching journalism, and I found it online. So it's like an inverted pyramid to say how it works or how it should work with data journalism. So the black triangle is like the first part, which is the biggest part, in which you have to find the news besides the lines of data sets and clean them, make a context of them, so understand if these data are useful, if they are reliable, and possibly you should combine them with other data. It means that sometimes you have news, you have some information, but it's always nice and better to combine it with different data sets. Just to make an example, like if you find some information about how much water there is available in one country, it could be useful to compare it with the density of population there, so you can see which part is more at risk, for instance. So if by this you can say something new in your article, so it's like really data driven kind of journalism. And then the second part is probably the most difficult, is to find a way to communicate what you have found. So visualization, narrating the story, and so on, and choose in which form you should publish them. So it's everything is really open, is really huge. You can find in the web really different styles. Like you can find articles that are sort of classical articles with a text, and maybe there is one part with some numbers, or some other ones are just like web docs or something like that, so with a completely different shape and aspect. So there are many possibilities. It depends the way you want to do it. It depends on many things also, like how much time you have, the kind of audience you want to address, and so on. I would say that so far as I've noticed, I think now everyone is used to this data visualization in the news since the pandemic started. So most every serious newspaper, online news online has some graphs, some diagrams in which you can explore the data, and sometimes they're really easy to use, and you can find a lot of information, like comparing new cases compared to the population, and so on. So this kind of journalism has become really, really popular because it tells us a lot of stories, because sometimes if you just hear the numbers, we are just overwhelmed and we don't realize what they mean. If we can have a map or something with different colors and graphs and so on, it's much more easy. So this kind of issues that have otherwise they would be really difficult to describe. And climate change is also, I would say it's even more related to data, because climate change actually is a matter of statistics. Like if there is a heat wave, for instance, it's not a climate news by itself. It can be an exception. It can be something that happens only once, or maybe something that is normal. So the news is in the statistics, is in the data. If this the frequency of these events have been increasing or not in the past. So it's really, really hard to do serious climate change journalism without using data. But in my experience, at least, maybe I'm a bit Italy-centered, and Italy is not really, is one of the last countries that is finding this kind of approach, in my experience at least. So it's not so common to find environment or climate related data journalism works, but it would really be useful. Here, I think I can't click on the link, but I just put some websites where you can find a lot of information and data sets about environmental issue. Like I will just say the first one, which is Eurostat, the European website in which you can find the official statistics about many topics, including climate change. So you can go there and download the data for free. They have Creative Commons license, I think. So you can use those data, and there are many other similar aspects. This is nothing new to you probably. I would just make in my personal experience, I would just remember my suggestion to ask scientists. Often data journalism is about economic data or statistical data which are involved in politics or other money and so on. When you do something which is related to environments, very often there are papers and scientists that don't have so much maybe audience, and they are just really glad to know that someone wants to make a news and write an article about their story. So in my experience, I used a lot Google Scholar, for instance, to find the up-to-date research about some topic. And I wrote to the scientists that made the publication, and they answered me, and they helped me even to understand better what they were meaning. So also there is not so much risk of say something wrong. Usually they are really helpful, and they are glad to about that. And it's quite easy because there's data are there already. So it's a good advice, I think. And I will now I will just go a bit more personal, like in my personal experience. I started to do data journalism thanks to this page that which it is EDJNet, European Data Journalism.eu. As you can see, it's a European project where you can find a lot of information about data journalism. There are a lot of data sets, a lot of materials, and a lot of tools to produce some interesting works with this data. And it's also a press review or of data related articles across Europe. And there are some projects, maybe later I can show some of them, like Europe 1 degree warmer, which is they made compared a lot of data sets, and you can go and click into most of European towns and see how the average temperature has changed in the last century. So there are many information like that. And I said it's more personal related because one of my articles so far has been published by this website and translated into English. It was in Italian at the beginning, so really I was really glad to proud for that. So I would like just to share it. It's quite interesting for me because this article was about a storm that had happened in the mountains of Italy 2 years ago. And I wrote this article 1 year after, trying to see how big was this storm and if there were other similar events in the past in Italy. So this storm destroyed millions of cubic meters of woods, like entire woods were swept away completely, and it was in the mountains in the Dolomites, so places which are also very famous and very popular tourist destinations. So it was really a shock because they changed completely sometimes. And I started to make some research, searching for scientists basically to see if climate change was related to this event and if this storm was unique. And I found that it was quite interesting because I found that it was not so unique if you compare it to other storms that happen in Europe, in the rest of Europe. There are storms that were even bigger and bigger that destroyed even more trees. But in Italy, it was completely new. You can see the graph, the orange rectangle is the size of the last storm that is like 10 times bigger than the second biggest storm in Italy's history. So it was really something exceptional. Then you compare it to European storms and it's not exceptional at all. So to understand what it meant, it was necessary to draw some graphs and realize the size and see if climate change was involved. And I called and talked to some scientists and they explained me. And I discovered that storms are actually expected to increase a lot with climate change in Europe, but not really in Italy, but more in the Central and Northern Europe. So is it a climate change issue or not? It's complicated, let's say. And to say that, I think diagrams can help you or maps can help you a lot. And also it was useful because now, as some of you know, Santiago knows, I'm writing another article about what happened to this storm 2 years after, because these places are still trying to recover, and they are wondering how to start, how to make the new forests grow. And also the same contacts that I had for the last article were still useful. So yes, my advice, I repeat it again, is write to researchers. And another topic that I think it's interesting is to how to make the diagrams that you produce readable. This infographic, I produced it for the mentorship for Climate Tracker, and it was about Venice and the lagoon of Venice, which was, as you maybe know, it was very often when the sea tide is higher than normal, it floods the lagoon, including the town of Venice. So I was searching for what research said about that, and if I could relate it with climate change. And what I found was something that scientists usually know already, but not the public, I would say, is that if the sea level is going to rise in the future, the barriers that have just been built to close the lagoon to save it from these high tides, they should work in terms of keeping of stopping the tide. But if the sea level rises, it will become necessary to close these barriers, these dams that have been just built so often that the lagoon itself will become something more similar to a lake than to a lagoon open to the sea. So this is a huge change for the ecosystem and for the life of people there. And so I try to make it quite nice. So I used some pictures that I found a copyright-free image of Venice, and I tried to the original paper has a similar graph, but not really made like this. It's much more hard to read. So I try to do like that, and I think it worked. Like the yellow that you see is the same color that these barriers have. So these are my tricks. But personally, my tricks, I'm not really a computer nerd, let's say. I'm more trying to use the tools, but I'm not that expert in that. And I try to keep my articles nice by writing. Usually I really like narrative writing. And data usually are seen as something cold, or something that you sometimes boring, that you have to go there and try to read. So what I try to do usually is to make my text a bit more narrative style, so trying to be more captivating in the way I write. And then I put the graphs, which is something that you usually don't combine together. So this is my personal trick, let's say. And of course, other people, maybe they make some graphic, they make them appear as very attractive in terms of the layout of the page and so on. It also depends on how much time you have, because it's also, if you want to hit the news, you can't wait so long. So sometimes you don't have the time to make a web doc or something like that. So again, it's an open question. This is what I usually do. Another tool that I found very useful, I can't do it now because it's a PDF, is using satellite images to compare data and show how big they are. In this case, it's not numbers, but it's images. Like this is in the Balkans, between Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it was about some exceptional floods that were happening there. And I found the photos by NASA, which are also copyright free, just I tell you that, after and before the flood. So you can see that the river becomes much, much bigger. So you can get how big this event was. This is not to find something new, but just a way to visualize the information. And I really like it personally. So just last thing I would say is that there are a lot of materials around to find maybe websites which are describing how data journalism should be, or comments about how it is being, how things are being made. And one thing that I really find interesting is the Guardian. Guardian is a newspaper that, of course, is one of the best in the world, and it has a blog all dedicated to data, and you can download data from there also, and you can have a review of what was done by this journal in the past. So I advise you to go there and search for information and for inspiration. That is also even more interesting. Okay, so this was my the slides I made were about that. So I don't know how I am with time. I hope it is I didn't speak too much.
I think
it was understandable.
I think you did exactly 20 minutes. That was the
Wow.
initial goal, so perfect.
Wow,
Thank you very much. I mean, we're a very small group today here, and as I said, this will leave as a video in our website, so you can all revisit it at any time and go for it. But as we are such a small group, I think it would be really nice if you guys want to engage with Marco and ask him any question. Just let me know in the chat. Just send me anything in the chat, and I'll open your mic and then you can ask Marco directly. Usually that's not the way we do it, because usually it's a lot of people, but because there's only a few people today, we can definitely do that. So if you are, okay, here's David coming in a bit late. If you are, if you would like to ask David, sorry, Marco, anything about his experience in data journalism or anything else, please let me know over the chat. Yep. Well, actually, I will ask you, I will just open your microphones. Hopefully there's no trolls here today. You guys can open your mics when you want, and you can ask Marco directly. Any questions? All right. Okay, so I think there's no questions. That's okay. Here's okay. Varsha, she's sending you, or he, I don't know, a message over the chat. I will just copy and paste it. This is from Varsha Srivastava.
Okay.
This is from her, or from him. And yeah.
Oh, thank you.
As I said, we will be posting this on Climate Tracker probably in a couple of weeks. And this will be accompanied with a post with some of the tools that Marco has mentioned and some others that you can use to make data visualization and so on and so forth. Obviously, Marco is based in Europe, as am I. So this has been quite a Eurocentric look at data journalism. I'm sure that.
Yeah, sorry for that. I know.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fine. All right. Okay. So, yep. We will have also the slides that Marco presented today. They will be available in the website, so you can take it from there. And yes, and also we will try to find some other resources and data banks that you can use from Asia and from Africa and from America, the Americas. So you can also like play with that data and do that. We're going to close it here. Thank you very, very much again, Marco. This has been extremely useful, really. Very, very insightful.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Really good examples. I recommend that you guys check out Marco's story. He has written 2 stories so far, but his latest one, I posted the link here in the chat. Let's post it again for the people who came in a bit later. This is Marco's story on Venice. This is a very, very good example of how to use data without making data the center of the story, but actually doing a narrative and explaining why is it important. not just showing visualizations. I think that is an excellent example. I recommend that you guys go and check it out and share it around if you want. And again, thank you very much. And I will see you probably next year, you all, because we're almost done this year. Take care and have a very good morning and afternoon and evening, depending on where you are. Bye bye.